Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm your host, Josie Way, and co-hosting with me is Bill Hannon on the left and Patty McGarrahan next to him. And our guest is Bonnie Wallace. She comes with many, many different gifts, and today she said she'd like to talk about her friends, the elementals. Now, if you don't know what the elementals are, well, why don't you explain who the elementals are?
All right, so my experience of the elementals is mostly with fairies, and They are water sprites because they do live right on the water. And they're miniature beings that can shapeshift, and there's dragonflies abundantly in that area. So they do
Any
tend
butterflies
to shapeshift.
too?
Yep, butterflies, but more dragonflies were the ones that I have on my property. And what I've learned is they love herbs. And I had a really cool experience this summer. I've had multiple meetings with them, but I did have an experience this summer where I woke up in the middle of the night. It was probably like, 3 in the morning or something, and I live on a lake, so the view from my window is this beautiful view of the lake with the stars, and when there's no clouds, it's an amazing view. So sometimes I just kind of stare hypnotically at the sky from my bed, and I see this light out there, and I'm like, wait a second, is that like a firefly? Because it looks kind of big for a firefly. And then it like disappears and shows up somewhere else. And I'm like, wait a second, like it's not flashing, it's like holding the light, and then it turns off, and then it's not like a firefly, and it's bigger than a firefly. And then I'm like, wait a second, what is going on with this thing? And then I'm like, is my neighbor like messing with me? Like, does he have like one of those little laser things like pointing? And I'm like looking, and there's no like laser beam from the neighbor's house. And I'm like, this thing is like moving. This is like, and it's this place on my property that from day one, I'm like, I know fairies live here. So the thing's jumping, and then it jumps down to the waterfront, and then it jumps to the herb garden. And it's like sitting in the herb garden. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like really a fairy. And like I'm starting to see it's a blue fairy. And then it comes across the lawn. It's sitting in the middle of the lawn, and I am starting to see the wings, like I'm starting to see the actual outline of it. And it comes right up to my window and literally right in front of my face, like 3 feet away from me. Nice. And it's just hovering there. I can see the whole outline of it, everything. And I was like, telepathically communicating, like, right. I see you, I see you, I see you, I see you. And it kind of just waited long enough, like hovered, and then went right back up to the top of the tree line, and that was that. And I was like, oh my God, there's really fairies, So you, Josie said you might know a little bit about the herbs that they like, or do you know any connection about that?
I do not know the herbs that they may have an affinity for. But I myself have been graced with the presence of leprechauns in gardens.
Wow, leprechauns, let's hear more about this.
Well, I'm just, it's just interesting. I mean, I knew I had a leprechaun in my garden. In fact, a friend of mine, she's known as the herb wife in Rhode Island, Leslie Wooler, and she has actually, she's a gardener. She goes from garden to garden, and it's a business. And she actually was aware one time that something was watching her. And so she kind of just stole a glance to her right, and she saw a leprechaun who was larger than others that she had seen. And as soon as she recognized and said hi to it, it disappeared.
Yeah, excellent. They are shy.
Well, I think the thing is that they're making you aware that your senses are picking up on their frequency. And everything resonates to a frequency, whether it's a live plant or it's a stone or it's you and I. And you know, it's so easy sometimes when you walk up to a person to have a kindred feeling about that person, or you say, well, I don't like this person at all, you know, and it's just has nothing to do with how good that person is or how good you may be. It's just your frequencies are not in sync.
Yeah.
And so you may not feel comfortable with that frequency that person's resonating to. But I just think it's great when you mention what you were going to be covering on the show is, you know, the water sprites and the fairies and whatnot. I mean, they're really, a lot of people think of them as winds, but they're very powerful beings.
Oh, yeah, and they will heal you too. They're healing with humans,
Yes.
you know, if you become friends with them.
Sorry about that. I went to Ireland, and one of the places that I couldn't wait to go was they had a giant fairy circle. And you weren't supposed to cut across it. And one of the churches in Ireland decided that they didn't like how everybody revered it. The farmers didn't touch the fairy circle. And so they cut a road right in the center of the fairy circle and built a building for their church. And every time they got 2.5 to 3 walls up, a wall would come down. So they're very, very powerful. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Very powerful. And I saw a farmer on a tractor, and I was talking to him, and he turned around and he said, he goes, I have such great wealth as far as the things I grow flourish because I'm respectful of that fairy circle. So it's known as very powerful up there. And I got to tell you something, in all the places I went in Europe, and I spanned like all of Europe, all the places I went, that had to be the most powerful feeling I've ever felt.
Yes.
In that fairy circle.
And that's so when I first purchased the property I live on, it's 3 acres on a lake pond in Charlton, Mass. So when I first purchased the land and we were trying to figure out, you know, where everything would go on the property, because it was all forest at that point. There's these 2 stone walls that come together, and right at this point is where they congregate. And from the first moment I stood there, and there's a little waterfall that comes under the stone wall, and it goes down, and the waterfall goes right into the. And you stand right here, and you can just feel them. Right, they're right there. So I was there by myself on the property. I'm standing there waiting for the house to get built, and I look up. This is the first time I see them, and I see a blue and an orange one. And I'm like, they're really there. They're really there. They're right here. This is where they are. And I found out that they travel on the ley lines. And I believe that these stone walls that were built by the Masons were probably built on the same ley lines. So that's why it's the same connection. And the ley lines go all the way up to the Catskills in New York and all the way down to Miami. So I think I just happened to be on this ley line that they are on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the next time I had an encounter with them, my dog was standing at the, I don't know, the water, like lapping the water, whatever, he was standing on the edge, and I took a video of him, and there are like 20 little green things all around his ear, and he keeps going like this, like flying around him, and he's like, and it's like there's nothing there, but it's you can only see it on the film.
Nothing that you can't see.
Yeah, you know what I mean, but you can see it on the film, and and there's like these 20 little things, and there's no doubt that they are fairies.
Wow, I'm saying road trip.
Yeah.
Guys, let's do a road trip.
Yeah. So after that point, I was like convinced they were there, right? So early on, late spring, early summer, I was out, and my 11-year-olds were out, and they had a friend over, 11-year-old friend, and I saw a couple in the yard, and I was like, guys, if you're very quiet, and if you believe the fairies are back there, they'll show themselves to you. So I take the 3 boys, my friend was with me, we go back, and I have like 3 minutes of video. They were flying all over the yard, like giving a total show, and the kids were like, look at that one's an orange one, look at there's a blue one, look at there's a purple one. And they were like, I don't know why they chose that night to like, because I told the kids, if you believe, they'll show themselves. And they really believed. I mean, they're at that age where they were like willing to believe. And
so isn't that interesting as to how people who open themselves up to the frequency of pulling in universal energy and even invite aliens just by recognizing that they may exist and saying, you know, I am open to understand and establish a relationship with you, you know, please share your energy with me, that a lot of people are able to call in alien activity.
yeah, I have one friend who's very good at that. He does it all the time.
So the thing is that this is also what I have come to understand, that the frequency of other vibrations, you put that energy, that thought energy out there, and they will respond as, you know, as if you respect, they will respect. You know?
And these kids nowadays, they're so open. There are no walls. They're so open. It's spectacular to listen to them. And it's so nice because they've got parents like you that aren't closing them down. So it's flourishing.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
But it takes them a while before they share it with their friends.
Yeah, it's hard. I think too, it's hard, you know, it's a little bit of a dance with the kids, you know, because there's a lot of energy that's like, that's stupid, that's not true. You know, there's definitely that energy that,
Well, if you say it's not true, then it's not true.
right, for them.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, you know, I mean, you have to believe the power of affirmation, and you have to, by leaving yourself open and not shutting yourself down initially. You know, they may sense that you are at least open, and they may try to establish some communication with you, just like you were saying. You know, you were able to see them along the ley lines.
Yeah.
You know, it's.
We also see this in spirit development, how 5 or 6 people could be sitting in a class, and some of them get it and some of them don't get it because of the frequency that they're at. You know, there might be a spirit that comes in that 3 of them will see, and 2 of them don't see at all, or don't hear at all. You know, it's all about frequency.
Right.
And the expectations and perceptions that they have, that they came there with. But, you know, somehow when spirit wants to get you, when the fairies want to know you to know them, they're stubborn. They work hard to get to know you. If you live in a house with a lovely garden that they've lived in for centuries, and you love the house and the garden, they want to be friends with you. You know, and they might even wish to pick out the herbs that you grow and things like that. They might, you know. They might assist it.
I like that. I'm definitely intrigued about this leprechaun because, so lockdown started, so we moved in November of 2019, and then lockdown happened in March of 2020. So at that point, we hadn't done a lot of the yard work yet, so we were locked up, so we were like, let's just, you know, do some landscaping. So as I was digging up rocks, because I was building these stone walls for the raised garden beds, I'm digging up these rocks, and I started finding 4-leaf clovers. And since March 20th, or March whatever, the 15th,
17th, yeah.
I have found almost 200 four-leaf clovers. Not all on my property, some
Yes.
like just other places too. But now I'm beginning to think maybe there's a leprechaun. Because with all these four-leaf clovers, I thought that it was connected to the fairies, you know, but maybe there's a little leprechaun too.
Leprechaun too.
Well, all these things that our parents taught us were just stories, you know, to teach the children lessons, you know, life lessons. And, you know, like, don't tell fairy tales, you know, don't tell stories, you know, be honest and
Right.
all these to discourage that from
Sure.
the, you know, the old-fashioned scary fairy tales.
Yeah, right. Well,
And,
that's like, you know, the Dobie Gillis and the, you know, over in Ireland, you know, the guy who had a relationship with the leprechauns and what. Dobie Gillis was
Yes,
it?
yes.
Yes, I mean, that's, you know, an old Irish tale that's been made into a movie and all that. I mean, you know, it's very interesting. But, you know, a lot of the stuff that I have come to accept is not so much from personal experience, but from readings of Native American vibration. And the recognition and the communication, the relationships they had with water sprites, water fairies, and how powerful these beings were. And they were very strong presence near waterfalls and things like this, and the Native Americans respected that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel too like this, I was called into this place. Like I feel like this,
Oh, there's no accident.
like
you
it
know,
was like
you-
I was called here to sort of respect that there's definitely a Native American feel. Like I feel like there must have been Native Americans on the land at some point. Not sure when it transitioned to the stone walls, right? And it became, it's listed on the town as agriculture. So I'm thinking that they had, you know, something there with the stone walls, because it came to a
Right.
corner, so they
Right.
were separating some type of agriculture.
Yeah, or a
Property-wise.
lot of times, I mean, they would build the stone walls and they would rotate the fields
Well, you
where they
know-
would put lambs or sheep or, you know, goats in one pen, and they would rotate that. And, you know, each year they would grow corn in one, and they just would keep rotating that, or other vegetables such as squash or the beans or things
Yeah.
like this that were very big.
One of the things that they tell you in Native lore, and they still use it with masons, is when you're building fences and you start with stones, you don't put the stones down. You ask the stones who wants to go first, and they tell you. The rocks speak to you, and that's why some fences take forever to put together, because it's a person building it, and rather than the stones building it, you just simply tell them what its purpose is. You know, to keep grass eroding, running away with water. Please help us, you know, protect our property. And before you know it, they do the fence.
I'm very connected to Native American energy anyway, and there's belief, there's some in my heritage as well. But my main spirit guide that hangs with me all the time is Running Water, who's a Native American. And when I go to do energy clearings and places, when I get asked to go and do that, the Native American energy, they have such beautiful imprinted energy on the land that they're at. I took my grandson and we just hung out by Goddard Park, but off to the right, like farther down from Goddard Park. That area was all Native American at one time. And I actually did a clearing in one of those houses. And in their backyard, I could see the mother with the baby, breastfeeding one baby with another baby there, and it was so much love. And the herbs and everything that this lady was able to grow in her yard, you just knew it had help from a lot more than just her.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. My garden has, like, this year, because people were like, oh, all the rain, my garden did terrible. I'm like, we had some things that great this year. You know, like like my eggplant was crazy this year. I had so much eggplant, you know, so it's like, again, I definitely think they help the garden for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And do you find that they decide some years you need more of one thing
Yeah,
than
they wanted
another?
to-
Isn't
all
that
the
crazy?
eggplant. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I have a story. I don't know if it's angels or fairies that did this, but after my son passed away, we dedicated an area of the garden to put memorial plants in. And we didn't have cut flowers, we had potted flowers. And we had a dozen potted flowers that actually, some of them were big bushes. And the first year I planted some forget-me-nots. And every year I didn't plant them again. They came up every year. And my son told me through a medium that he was making sure they came up.
That's beautiful.
He didn't want us to forget him.
That is
Oh,
beautiful.
forget me nots.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is so cute. I love it.
The bright blue little faces.
Oh.
That is beautiful.
But it was, you know, so we told him we would never forget you. But we liked forget-me-nots. You can put them in.
Right. Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it's also, you asked me about the herbs. It's not that I'm going to focus on any specific herb, but actually on the person living in the house, or the persons or the family living in the house. That when somebody takes time and, you know, does some weeding or does planting flowers and stuff like that, it's not unusual for a plant that was never planted just to appear.
Yeah.
Could have been, you know, from bird droppings or from squirrels or anything along that line. But the thing is that there seems to be some affinity between the person and the herb that's growing for that person's health.
Oh, wow.
Right, that is an indigenous belief that anything you need to heal grows within a certain radius of your home.
And
All
I
the
found
herbs
that to
you
be true
need.
too.
Yeah.
Yes, right. The
I think it's a 1 mile radius.
wild lettuce that grows is a latex plant, and it has very strong medicinal anti-inflammatory properties to it. It's like it's used for pain. Colt's foot, you know, I never planted colt's foot in my yard, and yet, you know, it just appeared for a few years, and I can't recall what the affinity was, but at that time, I found out that it was a beneficial herb for myself, the roots. So, you know, there are other plants that just seem to appear out of nowhere, and
I call them the angels
us.
have arranged me.
right.
Had some ideas of some plants that might be attractive, but it could just as easily be the fairies.
The fairies are like the elemental, like
Yes.
they are the earth angels. Like they,
Yes.
yeah.
And in charge of them is Archangel Ariel.
Yes.
I'm told is in charge of the elementals.
Yep.
Oh,
We named a
okay.
granddaughter after, one of my granddaughters was named Ariel after that.
Yeah.
And she's 2 years old. She said she came here to help save the earth. Yeah,
I did do some looking up too, because the dragonflies are so prevalent on the property, and for some reason, I seem to find mating dragonflies like everywhere I go, and I joke that my totem animal is mating dragonflies. And I looked it up, and I guess Goddess Freya has a connection to mating dragonflies too. And ever since that, I feel like there's a presence with Freya energy there as
I have a
well.
lot of dragonflies around me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have butterflies appear a lot. My daughter loves the dragonflies, but I've had some. I had an experience with a dragonfly recently, and I closed up a room, and I was very upset afterwards. We had work done in the house, and when I opened it up, again, we had floors refinished with shellac and varnish and all that sort of stuff. There was a dead dragonfly in the house. Got trapped in the house, and I was like, "Oh, I made a mistake here." You know?
No, he gifted you. That's you. Now you have
gifted you the
Dragonfly
energy.
Medicine.
He
Really?
gifted that
Yeah,
to you,
when you
yes.
when you find an animal that has passed, they're gifting you their medicine. So that was literally a gift of Dragonfly Medicine
Yeah.
to you.
I always thought the dragonfly medicine was had to do with the iridescence of their wings, because their wings, it's a magic. It's very. So I've been looking into more magic.
No. My husband comes through as the brown. He was in the service for a long time, so you know the brown, the green, the gold comes through. And when I made decisions on what we were going to do when he passed, because he was one of those people that just liked his people around him, so we went down to Enda's Island, a Mystic. And I said to my daughter, I hope I'm doing what he wants me to do. And a dragonfly landed on my rearview mirror and rode with us the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Like, we're driving 35 miles an hour, and this dragonfly is staying in my car. It was like amazing. Here I am, you know. It was
Oh, I know.
beautiful.
I've had them like literally. I've had the mating ones come into my car in the grocery shop. Like literally, I'm going to put my groceries in the trunk of the car, and I've had mating dragonflies fly into the car and like not leave. I'm like, guys,
That's very cool.
Right?
Very cool. So you get some good stuff ready to happen. Me, I get hornets.
well, bee medicine is good too.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, have you ever seen a dragonfly nymph living in the water?
The baby ones, you mean?
Yes.
I have actually had. I was at a water park.
Yes.
It was a freshwater park, and I actually had a baby, like a nymph, land on me and grow from this tiny little whitish clear color
Right.
in a matter of 2 hours. I watched it grow. I watched it wings peel
Unfurl.
open.
Wow.
And then eventually it got the wings got stronger enough,
jealous.
and it flew off.
Right.
That is
It
beautiful.
was, and what had happened,
You have very good energy.
The craziest story, this is a true story. We were at this water park. I dropped my cell phone like under the dock, and we couldn't get it out. And there was so many people there. This was a while ago. This was probably like 3 summers ago. There were so many people there. We couldn't get a lifeguard to help us. So right after it dropped, the dragonfly landed on me. So that kept me occupied for 2 hours while the kids were swimming, and I'm trying to find a lifeguard. And eventually the lifeguard The lifeguard pulls my phone out. My phone still worked.
Wow.
Wow.
I like that.
For another like 2 years it worked.
That is great.
It was literally underwater for 2 hours at the bottom of the dock. And while this dragonfly just grew in the wings, it was the craziest
Wow.
thing.
Right.
I've never seen that.
I've never seen that. I would love to see that.
It was,
but I've never
I
seen it.
literally, as it was happening, I'm like, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this is happening.
Yep.
And then the phone works, and I'm like, I can't believe this phone works.
That is
Yeah.
I
excellent.
can't believe this phone works.
The reason we're mentioning insects, because a lot of times they appear as insects.
Yes, the fairies, they shape
fairies.
into dragonflies. Yeah, that's the magic in their wings,
Yes.
is the fairies.
Because even in that fairy circle, there were a load of dragonflies
Yes.
that we were seeing, that I saw when we were in the fairy circle.
What does this fairy circle, like, how big is it?
It's huge. It's probably like way bigger than probably a good portion of this
Is
building.
it open or wooded?
It's open.
It's open. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
And they built a road right down the middle of it
They didn't
and
like
ticked them off.
No.
Yeah, and then
Well,
behind
it was the intent.
the intent was the religious sector wanted
That's
to
right.
get rid of the fairy.
That's right.
And the people, claiming all this power on the fairies,
Right.
they wanted to get rid of it. So they built the road in between. The farmers, they still respected the circle.
We're running out of time.
Okay. Yep. They
How big was
respected
the
it.
leprechaun, though? I really want to know. Like, how big?
How big?
I mean, the fairies are like about this big.
No. Well, the leprechaun was, I would say it was probably like 4 inches tall.
Okay, so like about this big.
Yeah.
Okay, I just need to know what to look for now.